guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is an interview with Teresa Mulhern. I'm not going to go on too much at this stage because I'm doing a full introduction to Teresa and the reason for today's video at the start of the actual interview. So instead of rabbiting on now, let's get straight over to our Zoom call between myself and Teresa, where we're going to debate the subject of comfort eating. Let's get straight into it. Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Not used to seeing this type of thing before with a split screen and me just sort of sitting. You're sort of used to seeing me, well, either jumping about or, just generally jumping about. So yes, I'm joined by a guest today. So this is something really exciting and new for me. But the reason behind the video, basically, if you've seen some of my previous videos, you'll have seen that I did a resume of some research that was basically done by Fitain about the effects of lockdown on people's lives, their eating habits, their lifestyle habits, their drinking habits, and just how we're all affected really by lockdown. As a follow-up to that, then I put together a video to help people get back on track in terms of eating. So going through how to record, to track food on MyFitnessPal, and really just trying to help everyone get back on track, basically. And that led me on really to thinking about, why don't we have a chat with someone who's got a lot of knowledge in this area about the psychology behind eating? Because especially, I hate to be sexist, but especially for us women, we do have these massive emotional attachments for food and comfort eating. So this is Teresa, obviously, as you might have gathered by her name that's on the screen. But I met Teresa through one of a makeup group that we both follow called the Sexy Sausages. I know it sounds crazy when you say it out loud, doesn't it? So we both follow Make Me Up Missa, who is a makeup guru, we like to call her. Fabulous, does some amazing makeup. So we all met through a little community we've now developed, haven't we? Yeah. And obviously that is how I met Teresa. She's all the way over in Ireland, but by the power of Zoom, we have come together, and she's going to give a bit more of the sort of scientific psychological background. But I'll shut up now and I'll let sort of Teresa introduce herself and her skills, because I do tend to go on. So I'll shut up. Over to you.
So I'm Teresa, and my background is as a psychologist. So I have a BA in psychology, a master's in applied behavior analysis, and a PhD in applied behavior analysis. Because
now I didn't know all that. That's fab.
Yeah, and I work as a lecturer in psychology, but I also practice as a behavioral psychologist. I have a board certified behavior analyst doctoral level, so that means I'm a BCBAD. Wow. So I know stuff about behavior and why it is that we do the things that we do. That's essentially my specialty. So I will be talking a little bit today about like our behaviors around eating and why do we do the things that we do, what motivates us to do these particular things. So
I could really do with you on my shoulder when I'm at the gym, because a lot of my clients, obviously being a PT, my job is to sort of help people rein their eating in, and they probably think I don't understand, you're just telling me to track my food and it's all very black and white, and you eat less, you're going to lose weight and you move more. But there's a lot more to it, isn't there, for women? We do, and I'm sorry, I keep saying women, it affects everybody, but more so women than men probably. Would you agree?
Yeah, part of it is down to personality factors.
Yeah.
If we look at the 5 factors of personality, so there's openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So that's all around emotional stability. Yeah. And females tend to score higher on neuroticism than males. So it's like genetically, biologically, we are more predisposed to these particular things. And that's been a finding that has been shown across cultures. So it's not just something that we see in Western cultures. Right. It's also something that we see in like Eastern cultures, like Japan as well. So it seems to be all around emotional stability.
Well, it does. I mean, we talk about comfort eating, and really, when I did a bit of research about it, you'll probably be able to clarify, we should really call it emotional eating, but really, surely in terms of eating, we want to feel emotion with side eating, because eating's supposed to be fun, isn't it? We love it. We want to feel emotion. So why is it that emotional eating has become like a negative sort of slant, like, oh, I'm an emotional eater, and that should be a good thing, surely. It'd be nice to be able to attach emotion to eating, because we want to enjoy it.
Yeah,
we're often trying to fill a void, aren't we? I think that's the thing. We're trying to fill a void, and whether that comes from, different areas of life where something is lacking that we're trying to fill with food, it's never going to work, is it?
Well, like, I mean, evolutionarily, we kind of have to enjoy eating and food. Otherwise, we'd have died out as a species a long time ago.
Yeah.
The behaviors that help us survive as a species, they become like automatically reinforcing, is what we would refer to those things as.
Right.
So that's why we take a lot of comfort in eating. It's because we have learned that those are the behaviors that keep our species alive.
Right.
But it's all around kind of the developmental patterns of what we're exposed to early on in life that actually indicate whether or not we're going to go towards that as being, this is what I do when I have emotional distress versus not. And actually a big chunk of my research would actually be working with people with developmental disabilities who may not actually find food enjoyable. So I would actually have to do a lot of programs around teaching people to actually eat. So it's, you know, it's really interesting that as human beings, we have these extremes of just clinging to food way too much or just not going for it at all.
Well, that is so true, isn't it? You meet these people in life who say, when I'm stressed, when I'm excited, when I'm angry, when I'm upset, I can't eat. And then there's those other people who, when they're stressed or excited, when they're angry, will turn to food straight away. Isn't it weird how we have such extremes? And do you think that's just how we were brought up, or we just born that way?
A lot of the research is actually done by Jane Ogden. She is a British psychologist, and she's actually written a couple of books on it. And the consensus seems to be this developmental perspective, because early on, if you look at kids and you don't expose them to things like media, peers, etc., they actually tend to go towards very healthy foods. They'll want broccoli, etc., and fruit, and they won't necessarily want to try things like chocolate, which is, let's face it, if we're talking about comfort eating, we're often talking about
hedonic foods, usually, aren't we?
Yeah, we're not talking about somebody kind of going, geez, I ate a whole punnet of raspberries because I felt really sad.
No, it's not.
Yeah. But the research does seem to indicate that actually starting off, we tend to want those particular foods, like the healthy foods. And actually, it's down to exposure as to whether or not we'll go for more unhealthy foods, because there's research that shows that the degree to which children are exposed to certain foods, and by exposure, I mean they see it, and they can smell it. They don't even need to necessarily taste it. They are more likely then to want to try it. So that's things like TV advertising. What is in the house? Do they see mum and dad eating it?
And also, you've got that thing, and we've all had this as kids, where if you don't eat your main meal, you won't get your dessert. So we're always seen as like the dessert is the treat, is the reward, is the end of, I'll get this if I do this. So we're sort of conditioned, aren't we?
Yeah, we are conditioned to consider food as being a reward. And actually, interestingly, when we frame a particular food type as being rewarding, we increase its reinforcing value. So while we might, for instance, think that dessert is reinforcing, if we frame it so that you will only get this if you do this, it makes it even more reinforcing.
Of course.
So you've straight away increased the value of these things. Anytime that we have to work towards something, then we're like, oh, it must be extra important. And that works in anything else for any other behavior in our lives. You know, it's like that classic thing that you might see in New York of people are queuing to get to a particular shop, and people are like, what are you queuing for? And they're like, I don't really know, but
there's a queue.
It must be worth it because people are waiting to do this particular thing. So when you cue it to a person of, well, you can't have this really nice thing until you do this particular thing, you also make the behavior of eating the healthy food as less reinforcing of, oh God, this is a slog to go through. This is necessary.
This is the punishment to get to the reward.
Yeah. And actually they've done studies where they have had it so that, you know, you can't have your apple until you have eaten your main meal, and it has increased the reinforcing value of things like apples.
It's hard, isn't it? I mean, it's hard as parents not to do that, isn't it? Because you want the kids to eat the main meal, so this is your way of sort of bribing them. It's very difficult, isn't it? I sort of see, I mean, I don't have children, but I can see how that must be difficult for parents. And if that's where it stems from, that's where we need to start the process then, isn't it? Which
Absolutely.
is difficult.
Yeah, all of the research is showing you have to get in early with kids, and that's a big chunk of my work. Is I work with kids and getting them used to that particular thing. That's why we would look at having a reinforcement hierarchy. So like, it shouldn't just be that food is your reinforcer. You should have lots of other things that are your reinforcers. It could be, you know, like story time with mom and dad. It could be playing a board game. It could be, you know, going for a walk outside, that sort of thing. So you need to think about having lots of different things as being potential reinforcers for these behaviors that you want to increase. But as a society, I suppose we think of food as being inherently reinforcing. Again, it comes back to that automatic thing of evolutionarily, pretty much most people are primed to like food because it helps us survive. So whenever we think of what is it that's going to increase a behavior, we're like, well, this is the one thing that seems to work for most people. Food.
Yeah, isn't it? And I think as well, parents, you know, are up against it with the way we're moving society in terms of like you mentioned earlier about advertising, but as life goes on, we're surrounded by more and more, and the internet, and you know, advertising is everywhere 24 hours a day. I mean, parents are up against it, trying to battle against that, because obviously all the advertisers want to do is draw you in any way necessary. So that's going to be hard, isn't it? And it's not going to get any easier, I don't imagine. Social media, everything.
There's loads of studies. Like there was a study done by Halford and colleagues back in 2004, and they had young kids, like up until the age of 4, watch TV that included advertisements, and they put out snacks in front of them, so both healthy snacks and unhealthy snacks. And they had both children who are overweight and children who are of a like within the normal BMI, and they found that yes, the overweight children tended to eat more, and they tended to eat more of the unhealthy snacks. But they also found that there was a relationship between them recognizing the advertisements of the unhealthy foods that they were seeing, whereas the kids who were a more typical weight were less likely to have recognized the ads. However, because they saw the ads, they then ended up eating way more of that particular food. And you see, the thing is with presenting food to people when they're watching TV, we're not actually encoding it in our memory that we've eaten this particular thing. No. We need to engage in mindful eating.
Yes.
Because our brains genuinely, we forget that we've eaten this thing.
Yeah, you're just munching away watching telly. You're actually chewing the food properly. You haven't actually registered it. And then you just keep going till the first time you register is when you're literally probably like,
bowl is empty.
Sick. Yeah, bowl's empty and I'm in pain. Rather than, so we're all guilty of it. I mean, but what can we actually do about it as a society? Is it just like what you say, we need to have other things to reinforce good behaviour? That's literally the only way to...
That's a big thing. I think that's a huge shift that we need to have. And I think particularly when we're looking at things like food as reinforcer, and we're looking at things like when I am sad, I engage in eating. Well, you need to basically stop yourself, well, not stop yourself, but just kind of acknowledge the emotion that you have in that particular moment, and try to find alternatives. It's all about finding alternative behaviors. No more than you know, if you're talking to people who have drug addictions or smoking, they have to alter their behaviors so that they no longer engage in those particular things. We're talking about the same sort of functions of these behaviors. So you have to find something else. So for me, I can say this myself, I'm a huge emotional eater. I have lost about 12 stone in the last year.
No way.
Yeah. And amazing. A lot, like the big thing is trying to understand, like, well, why am I eating? Am I genuinely hungry? Or is it down to X has happened and this has been my reaction towards it? So a lot of it has been trying to have alternative behaviors around that. Now, I've been very lucky because I also got a gastric sleeve.
Right.
So straight away, my body physically won't let me eat beyond a certain point. So it's also actually forced me
But
to
you
go.
still have to make the right choices, I guess.
But it's also forced me to find those alternative behaviors.
Yeah.
So my big advice around that is actually find those alternative behaviors, learn to communicate emotionally. Like I've gotten a lot better in the last year of actually going, I'm feeling very overwhelmed. I need to take a step back, or I need to do X, Y, Z for my emotional health. And actually, you end up being psychologically so much more healthy as a result, because instead of treating the symptoms, you are treating the direct cause. Because you're just putting plasters all over these wounds rather than actually suturing the whole thing up.
So how did you deal with it in your own way? Did you feel like, when I want to eat, well, I just need to maybe go out and do some exercise, take a walk, do something else I enjoy? Did you have specific things you just turned to?
Pretty much, because I obviously have my own channel now, and I play with makeup. Makeup has been my thing of like
savior in a way.
I kind of go, right, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, I'm going to go and swatch eyeshadow palettes.
Yes. Well, I will definitely remember to put also Teresa's channel in the description. Go and watch her, but it's because how many eyeshadow palettes do you reckon now you have in your collection?
I'd say definitely over 300.
So you can definitely say that has been Teresa's saviour. That's her thing, and that's fabulous. Just find something.
This goes back to the thing of like relativity of reinforcement. Like, this will work for me, and there's unfortunately no one size fits all plan on something like this. This comes down to individual variability. I love this particular thing. I love things like yoga. That is my, like, if I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, I'm like, right, I'm gonna do some yoga now, and I kind of zone out for those 30 minutes and do that. But I know other people
would hate that.
Like Elena Glam, who I adore, she hates yoga. She's like, no, it's too slowly. I need to.
But she's got her own thing. She does her Zumba, and she absolutely loves it. Whereas you might hate that. You know, some people don't like the coordinate. But as I say, there's loads of things you could. I mean, even getting back to my previous video, starting tracking your food, find an exercise you enjoy, go and join a dance class. You know, there's loads of things out there just to break that cycle, isn't it?
Yeah. It's about experimenting, finding out what works for you. Like, try a couple of things on, you know. There's so many options out there. You know, there's online classes. Like, even for me, I have a meetup group where people who have similar views or want to make friends will meet up and go for a walk in the evenings. And that's lovely. Like, just little things like that. It's a free app that you can download. And you can meet up with people, go for teas, for coffees, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and then let's be honest, there's literally an app for an app and a channel on YouTube or something for every single activity, interest you could want to do. There's something out there for everybody to try and break that cycle of looking towards food to make you feel happy. Because in the end, we need to break that, or start to realize, is it physical hunger, or is it just that I'm looking to fill a void, a psychological void of sadness because something else in life isn't quite where I want it to be? I suppose, how do you recognize? I suppose the obvious thing is, usually it's physical hunger. The stomach is making noise if it's physical hunger. If it's not, then I guess it's time to look for something else to sidetrack you as such.
And even if we're talking about physiologically, the brain is a weird thing, because the receptors for hunger and thirst in the brain are actually really close to each other.
Yes, I've heard that.
Sometimes if you think you're hungry, it's actually that you're thirsty. So the first thing you should actually do is drink a glass of water. Give it about 15 minutes. And then if you're still hungry, it's legitimately, you know, that's what's going on.
And if your stomach's making a load of noise, yes, you're probably hungry, but invariably it's not. You're just looking for something to fill that void, whether it be emotional or otherwise. But so it's recognizing that, isn't it? Learning to recognize that. And I know I do harp on, being a PT, obviously I harp on about tracking food, but it is a fabulous education in what we're putting in our mouths until you actually realize, you know, it's a calories in versus calories out thing. Until you realize what calories you're putting in, you might not even realize you were going wrong. you know.
But there's
So
loads of research though that shows that even just writing down what it is that you're eating, it helps you become more mindful, and you end up eating less as a result, because you go, oh my God, I didn't even realize I'd eaten that whole bowl of cereal and that it's worth this amount. It makes you more aware, and actually even knowing what you have eaten psychologically makes you fuller. You are less likely to be hungry.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why have we been designed this way? It's making it so hard for us.
Well, it's partly, you know, as human beings, evolutionarily, there were whole chunks of time where we couldn't get food. We couldn't, because we were foraging, hunting lifestyle. So our bodies were kind of like, this is why we can overeat, by the way. It was quickly, we now have a food source. Have as much of it as possible.
And keep,
we may not be able to eat again until Wednesday.
Yeah. It's almost like our bodies haven't adapted to the fact that now everything is plentiful.
Well, it can't. It takes evolution a huge amount of time to actually change in that particular sense. And even when we're looking at things like epigenetics, which is, you know, the genetic code within people and how that interacts with the environment, that takes several generations. Like if we're looking at the epigenetics of Irish people, that was actually hugely impacted by things like the famine. This is why there's a lot of geneticists that believe that part of Ireland's obesity crisis is down to the 1845 and 1848 famine.
Interesting.
That our bodies kind of going, we don't want to lose this because we never know. When
potatoes! Love it. Oh, yeah. It's really interesting, though, isn't it? How things develop. Oh, yeah. It is interesting. And I mean, it is interesting just to get a different side of things. Like you obviously see things from a completely different side to me. And that's why I wanted to do this, because I think there's a lot of, like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of people out there who probably think, oh, she doesn't get it. She doesn't get why I, you know, need to eat this or why I'm drawn to this. And I'm just getting another point of view and another few tips. And there's some fabulous tips there. And the fact that you've done it yourself is, I mean, 12 stone. I
would also say a really, really important point that has come up from the literature, like there's been loads and loads of studies on this, is around deprivation. This whole idea of dieting and depriving yourself of, I can no longer have chocolate cake. I refer to it as
disagree with that.
I refer to it as the Adam and Eve thing, because as soon as you say that you can no longer have something, you want to even more.
Of course you do.
It comes from this thing that we call motivating operations, because now we're completely deprived of this particular thing. We want to even more, and it becomes even more reinforcing. So then when we do break and go off and have that piece of chocolate cake, having that is even more reinforcing. That behavior of eating that chocolate cake is even more powerful than if we had said, no, do you know what? On Fridays, I allow myself to have a little bit of a splurge, and it's all right. It's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal, because it's going to come again next Friday and the Friday after, and maybe Wednesday. As long as you can moderate it, it's not a problem.
This is like what the research is actually saying. Like, don't deprive yourself. And actually, the research again says, it comes back to that developmental thing. It shows that mothers who are dieting, who are depriving themselves of these high-fat foods, are more likely to give those high-fat foods to their children then.
Really? Like a sort of feeder thing?
Yeah. It's like a replacement behavior. If I can't have it, you can have it, because you've seen this now as being highly reinforcing, and obviously subconsciously we want the best for our kids.
Yeah.
And we're thinking, this is a really reinforcing thing, I'll give it to them.
Right.
So actually depriving yourself, if you are a mum or a parent, and saying, I can no longer have this chocolate cake, I can no longer have this particular thing, it actually has ramifications, not just for you, but for the rest of your family, which sounds really huge, but that's what the research is actually saying.
Yeah. It is huge. Along with, like we were saying at the beginning of the conversation, the reward thing for eating, if you're not going to eat your tea and, you know, you're not having your dessert. Yeah, like this thing about you must finish everything on your plate. Well, actually, if you've registered that you're full, no, don't. Just leave it. But as a kid, you were never allowed to do that, really, were you?
Yeah, no, and that's it's an unhealthy thing to start teaching people, but even for myself as an applied behavior analyst, a big chunk of my work would be around teaching behaviors. So I would teach like social skills, play skills, etc. And I would work with kids with autism primarily. And there's been a big shift in the behavior analyst certification board over the last couple of years around using food as reinforcers. Because it would have been very, very typical of you to pick up a paper in the 1990s that was published in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis saying, we taught this particular kid social skills and we used chocolate buttons as reinforcers.
Right.
That they're trying to go away from that as much as possible. And in the very early days of a program, you may use food, but it will be pairing it with other things.
Yes.
Like pairing it with toys that they may not have ever played with before, because you want to, like I said before, have that hierarchy of reinforcers. You want to have lots of things that somebody
not just chocolate buttons. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is often where we've kind of gone wrong. But the good news is, because things like exposure work so well, it means that even with kids and even with human beings, adults like ourselves, the more we see of a particular food, even a healthy food, the more likely it is that we are A, going to try it, and B, enjoy it.
Yeah.
So the more you expose yourself to things like quinoa, aubergines, tofu, etc., the more likely it is that you are going to adapt to that and want that in your life. And the more you do it, the less times it actually takes for you to actually end up having it as a preferred food, particularly with young kids, the more exposures.
It's hard with young kids. I mean, I say I'm not a parent, but you know, you hear from parents, I just can't get them to eat vegetables. I can't get them to eat. It is tough, isn't it? But it's like you said, just keep trying and keep reinforcing.
Keep presenting it to them. They don't even necessarily, like, the early days of a program around eating should be, you just have to touch it.
Yeah.
Interact
that hurdle.
Yeah. And that they realize it's not a threat. It's a form of neophobia, which is like a fear of new foods. And again, that's adaptive. Because that comes back to when we used to be outside and tiny humans were like, I am not going to try anything that hasn't been presented to me before because it could be poisonous.
Yeah, isn't it? When you say it like that, it's just so obvious, isn't it? It's just so interesting. Looking back at how things have developed in us is very interesting. Yeah, it's great. Honestly, we could talk for hours about it. It's really cool.
I have a whole 2-hour lecture on it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, guys, if you want to know more, if you want to speak to Terry, I mean, are you talking about these sort of things in your daily life at work, or is this a little bit different, or is this what you sort of thing you're focused on in your daily?
Yeah, I give a module on health psychology, so the psychology of health and healthy eating and health behaviors and exercising, etc. So I would look at the motivations and stuff behind that. So literally that's what my students are listening to at the moment, is just me going, well, why do we do the things we do? Why is it that we logically know we should have our 5 a day, but people aren't?
No.
Why is that?
Yeah. And do you get involved in research as well? Are you doing your research at the minute?
My primary research is with, like I said, kids with developmental disabilities. So at the moment, I'm actually working on a program around getting a kid to actually like accept vegetables.
Yeah. So just like we're talking about, just getting past the touching phase and then moving on.
Yeah. So that's like a lot of my applied work would have been around that sort of thing. And like I said, everything from that to toilet training to social skills,
everything,
skills, a little bit of everything. So,
and I can imagine with the eating vegetables and a child, would you expect that to take weeks, days, months, maybe? Or is it very different depending on the person?
Yeah, it depends on the person and their degree of fear towards things, because some people they could have a huge fear around it. It also depends as to how much exposure they've had previously to these particular things and the level of reinforcement. But the more you do it, the more it works, or the quicker it works. So if you have, like, say 3 meal times and say 2 snack times, and you're just presenting them with these particular foods on each of those occasions, you can usually see them starting to interact with it by about day 5 or 6, usually.
Interesting.
They're like,
maybe. Ooh, I bet it's a great moment for you when that happens, though. You must feel like, oh, yes, but you're trying not to show it. Internally celebrating.
Yeah, but even like you modeling this behavior as like a parent or as a peer is a big thing, because I remember I worked with a young girl once, and she had very, very selective behaviors, and I used to bring my own packed lunch into work because I used to work with her for 9 hours a day.
Wow.
And she'd go off and she'd eat her rice cake because that's all she was eating. Like she was very picky. But because she had seen me sitting down and eating carrot sticks and an apple and all of these bits and pieces, she came over to me one day, sheer exposure from her just seeing me do that, and she just pointed at it because she hadn't developed the language yet. And she pointed to the carrot, and I was like, yeah, here you go. And she put it in her mouth. She was kind of like, oh, what is
wow.
this? And ended up sitting with me most days then, just stealing bits of my lunch.
So that's all it took.
The sheer exposure. We also know that having peers eating healthy foods makes us more likely to eat healthy foods. Similarly, having peers eating unhealthy foods makes us more likely.
It's back to that thing. Yeah, we could talk about this for hours, but it's about that thing. They do say you are sort of like a product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And actually, if you do look around you at the 5 people you spend the most time with, you can sort of see that. Yeah. Can't you? So if you have got people in your life that are, negative, draining, maybe, or eating unhealthy food all day, it's maybe time to have a look at that. But yeah, honestly, it's the whole psychology behind it, I find so interesting. It really is. It's great. It's lovely that I'll be able to talk to you about it. And hopefully somebody watching, even if, we're not saying we don't have the answers to everything, but even if somebody out there watching can just try and intercept the behavior by doing something else, then that's a result, which is brilliant, because that's what we want, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds easy, but the reality is it is tricky, and it takes a lot of attempts. And I think the take-home message should be, don't be hard on yourself if you trip and fall.
Yeah,
just dust yourself up and get back up.
Yeah. Because keep going, keep trying, and just keep trying to break that and find other interests, something you really enjoy. There's no point in forcing yourself through going on the treadmill at the gym if you absolutely hate it. Why? Find something you love. I always think people sometimes force themselves through, I must join a gym or I must do this. No, there's millions of things out there you can do. Absolutely. Just to break behaviors. If you do something you find you're miserable from, it's never going to work, is it? Yeah, it's consistency, and that's what I say with everything. It's consistency is the key, and it might, like you say, it's going to take time if the behaviours have been there since you were born.
Yeah, it takes about 30 days to form a habit.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, so if you can do 30 days of a particular thing, you have built up new neurons in your brain that are firing to have these particular behavioural patterns. If you can do that for 30 days, you have done the hardest part.
That's brilliant. Right. Well, that is a good takeaway point. But as well as, like you said, if you fail, don't see it as a fail. Just have another go. Keep trying. You'll get there eventually.
Yeah. Take it as a learning experience. Look at what happened and kind of go, well, why did this happen? Mm-hmm. Did I end up eating a whole chocolate cake because I had gone the whole day without having any other proper food? Was it that I hadn't prepared food? Was it that, I had a really crap day and I had nobody to talk to? Look at what was the antecedent for that behavior? What was the trigger for that? And if you can look at that and then realize what it was that triggered you to do that, then it isn't a failure. You have learned something from it 100%. And you can prepare going forward to make sure, okay, well, this is why this isn't going to happen again. I'm going to make sure that I have meals ready in the freezer to take out so that when I come home after working a 12-hour shift, that it isn't going to be me eating a takeaway pizza. It's going to be me eating a prepared meal that is nutritive and healthy for me.
Completely. It's brilliant. It's exactly right. It's preparation. I know it's tedious. We always say it. Preparation is the thing, isn't it? Preparation, consistency, and just keep at it, and you'll get there. That's brilliant. Oh, well, thank you so much, Teresa. It's been brilliant. And we've given you the takeaway point, but also I know nothing to do with food, nothing to do with behaviour, but I will definitely link Teresa's channel. So go and look at her smooshing things on her eyes.
Technical term.
Smooshing, you created that word for me, and now I hear it all the time, and I'm thinking, Teresa, smooshing thing in our eyes, we love it. And brilliant. And yeah, obviously, have you got any questions about any of this, slap them in the comments, and if it's something that Teresa can answer or me, we'll do. And yeah, we'll leave it there, unless you have anything else you would like to.
No, I mean, I could.
Oh, no, I'm the same. I'm the same. We have to know when to
stop. Edit yourself.
It's very difficult. But yeah, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much. And no doubt if we have something else, if somebody requests something else they'd like us to debate, then we'll be there.
Yeah,
as long as it's something we know about, obviously. Psychology behind ...
Yeah.
Give it to us.
Excessive exercising.
Well, I can help you a bit with that one.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Right. Thank you so much, Teresa.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
So there we have it. That is our video, the interview, the discussion between myself and Teresa. I loved it. It was brilliant. She's so knowledgeable, and just literally all that information just seemed to come straight off the top of her head. She's obviously extremely well read in the subject. And as a result of that particular conversation you've just seen, we're already talking about doing something else about some other subjects to do with the health and wellness space, and obviously to do with behaviours around it. So please, as I said in the video, put any requests you might have, alongside this in the comments below. And as I did say also in the video, I have put the links to Teresa's makeup channel. Yes, I know nothing to do with what we're talking about, but if you're interested, you'd like to have a look at her channel, it's linked below. I will also link Make Me Up Missa's channel, because let's be honest, if it wasn't for Missa, myself and Teresa would never have ever come into contact. So really have her to thank for that. So I just wanted to mention that at the end as well. Thank you, Missa, for bringing us together, because it was really interesting. I really enjoyed it, and it enlightened me to a few things as well. So, and I'm sure it helps you guys out as well, just understanding why we do the things we do when it comes to eating. Anyway, we talked enough on this video, so I'll leave it there. Remember, please guys, remember to like and subscribe. Really helps me out. Just slap a like on the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks again, guys. See you later.